Well, buen Camino Pilgrims, I'm Jeremiah Gibbs, I'm your Camino guide, and today I've got kind of a special episode. One of the things I've really been wanting to do more of on the channel is to be able to tell some Camino stories, and I've got the first of those today, and hopefully you'll get to see some more of these upcoming as we tell some of the stories of some other pilgrims and how Camino has been important in their life. But today I've got my guest is Carol Alexander Price. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself in just a moment, but excited about what she is doing to be able to help pilgrims as well. Well, before we get started with the video, I just wanted to jump in here in the middle because I wanted to give you the results of the drawing that we had a couple weeks ago. If you saw the video about the Ultra shoes, I said that we were going to give away 3 t-shirts from Poiema Designs, the partner that we've partnered with to create some Camino gear, and in celebration of having 2,000 subscribers and 100,000 views on these videos, decided to do a giveaway. I've got the results of that. So if I've got hopefully I say this name's right, Tamaya Kakese maybe, and Luciano Leandro and Wendy DeMoss. Check out the comments. I'm going to post on your comment so I can be in touch with you, get you out one of our t-shirts from Poiema Designs. For the rest of you, I hope you'll go check out the site and find a t-shirt that you like. That certainly is great support for the channel. Let's get back to Carol's interview. Welcome, Carol, and thank you for being on here.
Hi, Jeremiah. It's lovely to be here with you.
Yeah. So if you would, Carol, just first tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do in your everyday life? What is what's life like for you, and where you are? Where are you?
Well, I live in Spain, which is very dark at the moment. Obviously, it's nighttime now, and a bit chilly as well. I live in the north of Spain on the Meseta, in Palencia, just sort of above from Easter on the Camino Frances. I'm primarily an English teacher, and I work from home, but in my spare time or in the summers and weekends, I'm actually a Camino guide. I have a really simple life, like a lot of us up here do, very sustainable and simple. When I'm not walking, when I'm not teaching, I'm walking my dogs. I've got 4 dogs and 3 cats. If I'm not walking my dogs, I'm probably enjoying a nice cafe con leche in the local village and just watching the world go by. And at weekends, I walk with a walking group that I've actually created here in my village. So a really simple, I love my life. It's, being in Spain is just, it's just incredible, really.
Yeah, I think for many of us that are pilgrims, the way of life that you're describing is part of why we love walking, right? I mean, not that every day is pilgrimage just because you live near the Camino, but but the way of life that you have in Spain is what draws many of us to it. So very, very cool. So sort of how did you get started with Camino? When did you learn about it? When was your first pilgrimage?
Well, I've done everything late in my life, Jeremiah, everything. I've done everything the wrong way around. Well, not the wrong way around, but a different way around to a lot of other people. And I went to university when I was 39 years old, back in 2002, to do a law degree in Newcastle. And I met a Fijian girl there. She became my friend. And as we were soon to find out, a lot of people outside of Europe really knew a lot about the Camino Santiago, but we within Europe were slightly ignorant, I think, of it really. And she just said to me one day, "Carol, what are you doing in the summer?" I said, "Well, I haven't really got any plans." And she said, "Do you want to walk the Camino?" First of all, I said, "What is the Camino?" So she sort of described it to me as walking across Spain for 800 kilometers. And that was it. That's all I knew about the Camino. Those days, there was no Facebook, very little internet, to be honest with you. So, and I think maybe a couple of guides existed. I don't remember. I think I had one. So, it wasn't like we could get any information about it or we couldn't get any advice. So I just went and bought a great pair of boots, Berghaus boots, and a good rucksack. The rest of my clothes were just normal everyday clothes. I didn't spend any money on it. And I said, yeah, let's go. And we went. I didn't really have a specific reason for walking it because I didn't really understand the whole concept of it. I just saw it as an adventure, and I love adventures. I never turn an adventure down, and sort of a way to keep fit. And this changed, and I didn't realize at that time, obviously, that it was going to really change the course of my life.
Yeah. And what year was that, Carol?
That was in 2003.
Okay. So the Camino had already sort of begun to resurge by that time, but not all of the internet resources and everything like there is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was really in the mid-'80s that the Camino sort of started to begin to recover, I think, from having been kind of non-existent for quite a while there. Yeah. So how many times have you made pilgrimage then?
Well, I actually, after 2003, I sort of left it behind. I'd said to myself, "Oh, I'm going to come and live here one day." Oh, we all do, don't we? We all say, we all say we're going to come and live here one day. And I just went off, and it changed my life in a sense that I started to look for jobs that allowed me to travel. I gave up on the idea of a law or a legal profession, a legal career, and just traveled around the world. And it wasn't really till about 2019, really, that I suddenly decided it was time to move to northern Spain. I lived in southern Spain at the time. And so I went up and walked from Logroño to Burgos. And then I had plans to walk the Portuguese. I had plans to walk the Primitivo. And as we all know, the wonderful COVID struck and all those plans were dashed. So, but I'm quite lucky. I live close enough just to pop down for the day and do, a short walk, maybe go and visit the Albergs and the Hospitaleros, and visit friends of mine who are walking the Camino. And actually next Sunday, I'm taking my group down to walk from Hontanas to Castro Jerez. So, yeah, it's at my fingertips.
Yeah, that's right. And it's, it's a very different experience, I imagine, to be able to do these sort of day walks on a route where, I'm sure that you're meeting and seeing pilgrims who are in the middle of their journey, but for you, just being there for a day at a time sometimes. So why has this become a big part of your life? Why have you decided to move to Spain to be a part of this? It sounds like you moved north in Spain as well, but why was that important for you to do?
Well, it wasn't. It was a slow burn. It took me years, but it was subconsciously. I was always working my way around to getting to the north of Spain. I don't think I really realised it then. It's that Camino magic, Sometimes it hits you immediately. Sometimes it can take a number of years, So as I mentioned, it changed my life, and so I immediately qualified as an English teacher. Which enabled me to work in places like Poland, Costa Rica, Seville, Malaga, Menorca, eventually southern Spain. And I built an English academy from scratch in southern Spain. And then, but I never really felt complete. I never felt that I was in the right place. It was really strange. I never felt entirely happy. I was okay. I was happy enough. And then COVID struck, and I know that the COVID pandemic was a very, very tragic time. For me, it completely transformed my life because I had to close my academy after 10 years running it, and I put it online. Suddenly I thought, oh, hang on a minute, I'm completely online now. I can live wherever I want. And within a year, I'd put my business online, I'd sold my house down south, and bought a house in the north of Spain, and which is where I am now. It's important to me to be here for a lot of things. I am an introvert, a social introvert. I am an introvert. I do like my own space. I like the fact that here you are among people that think the same as you, that have the same passions as you. And I've made so many good friends now here on the Camino. I finally feel like I belong and it's the right place for me. I just love the fact that whenever you're walking, it's almost like you're meditating because you You learn to live in the present and to appreciate, what's happening now. And for me, it's really important to have that feeling, that, the ability to walk on the Camino and to have that feeling. It makes me feel very secure and very content.
Yeah. So why did you decide to begin guiding pilgrimages, leading others on pilgrimage? What made you want to do that?
Okay, so I am on a number of Facebook pages, as we all are. We can't help ourselves, can we? We're just obsessed with these Facebook pages. And I love them, actually. They're such positive pages. I really do enjoy interacting with people on there. But I did notice something that, I'm quite a sensitive soul. And I did notice that there were people, women in particular. Now, I'm not saying, this is not unique to women, but this is my area of expertise because I am one. I noticed there were a few posts coming up and saying, I'm a bit worried about walking the Camino by myself. Looking for reassurance, really, looking for people to say to them, I was thinking about using a guide, or, looking for someone to talk to them. And very, very well-meaning pilgrims were replying with things like, you'll be fine, just put your rucksack on, just go to Spain and start walking. And you know what? A lot of people can do that. And that's fantastic, but not everyone can. So I just thought to myself, these people, what are they doing? If they're not reassured, what's happening to their dreams? And I was just I thought, I wonder if they just put them on the shelf and forget about them because they're too frightened. And it worried me. And being a woman and having gone through the menopause myself and a relationship breakup as well, I know how much these things can affect you and how they can knock your confidence. Absolutely. People may not realize that, but they do. They really knock your confidence. And so I really wanted to offer and empower women, give them the opportunity to experience something like the Camino, which is just basically probably exactly what they need. And also, who doesn't want to walk the Camino for the rest of their lives and work on it? Who doesn't?
Right. Yeah. So, well, at least those of us that are the people who are watching this channel and the two of us. I'm sure that there are people who that sounds like torture, but for many of us,
my sister would hate it.
Yes.
Obviously, but for me,
I try to be very straightforward about that conversation with folks to say that this is not for everyone, but for those of you that it's you, then you may not be able to get it out of your system. So, what was it about this empowering women, and so what made that important? What were some of the things that make that important for the women that you serve?
As we get older, we're in our autumn years. Well, I am. You're much younger, but I am in my autumn years, and I've always been, a very courageous, brave soul. But since hitting the menopause, and I have felt a lot more anxiety. I'm not quite as confident as I used to be, and I certainly don't want to go and walk on the Camino by myself. It's not something I would want to do. And please, there are lots of people who do it, and I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just not my choice. So, as we get to this stage in our lives, a lot of people have suffered the menopause. Some have suffered nasty divorces. Maybe they're empty nesters. Their children have flown the nest and gone off to university. People who are carers have been caring for people. Suddenly they lose their role in life and they feel a bit lost. And, all of these things create anxiety. They create a lack of confidence. And you can become really, really overwhelmed very easily, And you know what? Sounds awful, but sometimes we feel a little bit invisible, to the outside world. And I just want people to realize, women in particular in this position, that the Camino is probably just what they need, a time to rest, because, they may have been through some really terrible situations, a time to reflect on life, a time to think about what it is they're doing and maybe what they want to do, a time to reassess, and you know what, more importantly, a time for themselves, because we are natural empaths, We look after other people before ourselves quite often. And I'm not saying that's just women, men too.
Yeah.
And it's a bit alien to us to do something completely for us. I want to make them realize that, this is okay to do,
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think one of the things that you mentioned sort of the folks who often hear, oh, just go, just go, just go. And I think a lot of times, and it depends, this is very distinctive to certain countries. I mean, I think every country would have a different kind of expectation about this. But at least in some countries and cultures, the idea that a woman could go do that is absolutely foreign. And in some cases, that's because the country itself that they're from doesn't feel safe. Maybe it's not safe.
Yeah.
And in other cases, it's just the ways that people have been enculturated. But, I think about in the city here in Indianapolis where I live, there are areas where women probably don't want to, in fact, men probably don't want to be out walking alone. And so, I think if that's the mentality, it is somewhat crippling to then think that you're just going to ignore this thing that has been taught in you for so long and go out and make the way. And I do think, we hear occasionally of some instances where people are, stalked or hurt, or frequently it's not actual, people are not actually hurt. Sometimes that has happened, but even those few instances when 300,000 people are walking a year, that those few instances are not high crime, right? I mean, we're talking about a pretty safe experience on the whole, but it doesn't matter if you already feel that that's a fearful thing, right? It doesn't matter if it's safe or not. If your perception is that it's not safe, then it will still be crippling for you. Yeah. So what are some, I think all pilgrims, I mean, every pilgrim I've ever talked with has some anxiety about the pilgrimage because they're about to walk farther than they've walked and do things that they've not done and all those things. But what are some of the fears and anxieties you think that are unique to women?
Okay, so two things that are not unique to women, but I think are really, really important, are traveling to a country that you're not familiar with. It's a scary thought. You don't know what to expect, and also with a language that you don't speak. These are two real major fears. I think unique to women. I hope I'm not fairly unique to women. Traveling by yourselves, because for example, I was used to my partner driving me everywhere. So I lost my confidence with my driving. And since our separation, I've had to regain that confidence. So I drove to Santander the other week, which is an hour and 15 minutes away, and I was over the moon. But, imagine you're traveling from America across to Spain or South Africa, Australia, whatever. This is a really long way. And if you're used to your partner organizing everything, which, we all have our strengths in a relationship, that's scary. I think I notice a lot of things about I'm leaving my husband behind, or I'm leaving my children behind. And that worries. That's unique, that worries women very, very much. Safety on the Camino. Okay, so Spain is a safe place overall, but they do worry about that, of course. And their families worry about it, which makes them worry even more. Confidence in their own ability is something that people worry about, obviously. I was speaking to Lee Brennan, actually, just the other day, and she was saying, for example, sleeping in mixed dorms. This might not be something that a woman's used to, sleeping in mixed dorms with men. She had to sleep, for example, in a dorm just the other night. There were 5 French men and her. So she just had to trust that it was going to be okay. And that's a scary prospect. Walking alone and eating alone. If they they're worried, will I have to eat alone? Will I have to sit in a restaurant by myself? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, these are all,
Yeah. Yeah, and in particular, I think the ending up in a room with in a mixed room, particularly if it's 5 men and a woman, or
yeah,
sometimes you end up in a pilgrim room and there's only two of you in the room anyway, right?
yeah,
Because that albergue happens to have is not at capacity or something. And I think all of those can be more anxious probably than when, even if it's a mixed dorm of 6 or 8 people, where safety in numbers, right? But the anxiety about that can be even for folks who have lots of confidence. I think sometimes that can be
yeah, absolutely.
unsure.
Yeah.
I remember even this summer, I was walking in July, and the first part of July this year was pretty cool, but then by the end of July it got pretty hot this year, and so a lot of us were walking very early in the morning, and there were a couple of the young women that said, that they were scheduling with us. They would say, "Hey, why don't we leave around this time so that, even if we didn't walk together, if we were 100 meters apart, that
Yes.
helped them to know that they were okay." And so, there were several times this summer that, we scheduled our departures, even if we weren't going to necessarily walk together, so that until sunup, they could feel like they had that kind of safety. And these were incredibly confident women, all of them women who arrived on the Camino alone, but still there were these places that they were unsure. What are some of those things that, some of these anxieties may be misplaced, but I think there are some things that maybe some folks should be cautious about. What would you say are some of the places where people are rightfully should have some caution and maybe some anxiety that and take some precautions?
Well, look, like I said, Spain is a relatively safe country, but there is crime. Crime exists. It's not something that happens every day, but there is crime. There's been cases this year, for example. I've spoken to people who have experienced indecent exposure and pests, and there was recently a post of a woman who was raped, and we all know about the murder. But these are terrible, terrible situations. They are far and few between, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But I still think, it's foolhardy to think that it's okay to just get up in the dark and walk by yourself and walk through forests on your own. I'm not saying you should be afraid, but I think you should be careful. It's a risky. I spoke to someone, Brigitte, my friend Brigitte, who's from Namibia, and she actually undertook a self-defense day course before she went. And she said to me, "Carol, tell them all they've got to carry a whistle." And I think that's good advice, so that you can make a noise that would possibly, frighten them if anything like that does happen. Recently, there's been a new app provided, and it's called Alert Cops. Have you heard of this?
I haven't. I'll put a link to that in the description if you describe it a little.
Yeah, basically it's an app where you can, if you feel like you're in a potentially risky situation, you can use the app to alert the police, and you can use the chat, or you can send videos, etc. to them, and you can share your location. They also apparently send out notifications if there are any risks in your particular area that you're in. So I haven't used it yet, so I can't, say how good it is or how useful it is, but it's something to look into. The police here want you to be safe, At the end of the day, it's their job. And whereas in the past they may have brushed things under the carpet, which has happened, I think, the police here are great. The Guardia Civil are so approachable. They want you to be safe. And if you feel like, there's a situation somewhere, you need to report it to the police,
Yeah, in fact, this year they've several. Maybe this is only in Galicia, but several of the police stations have started giving stamps and have become places for pilgrims to check in, and I think really just so that the pilgrims become accustomed to speaking with the officers, knowing where the police stations are. The officers can learn probably, what stories pilgrims are telling each other. Hey, we heard about this guy over here, that kind of thing. So I think that's a pretty interesting outreach that they've begun there. And the other thing that I would say, there have been a couple of of YouTube videos recently. I think both of them were from this year, of women who had encounters. I think I would put in the category of indecent exposures, out on the trail, like in the middle of of the Camino, and in both of those cases, they reported the police being incredibly helpful. I mean, over and above, like the kinds of thing that we would never experience from a report of an indecent exposure in the United States, probably, or at least not expect to have that kind of care, but incredible care from the officers that were responding to those cases and so on.
Yeah, and a lot of them actually do speak English. Not all of them, but there are a lot of them that do speak English, and they will try their best to help you. Yeah. I've got nothing but praise for our police over here, our Guardia Civil. Yeah,
very good. So, if somebody wanted to be able to make pilgrimage with one of your groups, how would they find out? What are some of tell us a little bit about those pilgrimages that you'll be leading in groups.
So I came up with the idea of a thing called Camino Tasters. And Camino Tasters, the aim of these tasters, they're usually about 1 to 2 weeks long. And the idea behind them is that they will gently introduce, like a gentle introduction to the Camino, but in a supported sort of group, a small group of women. And, and there will be support in a sense of, there is transport available for people if they want to transport their luggage. I will call the accommodation in advance, because I think also that's quite reassuring for a lot of people. So I have a Facebook page called Camino Confidence. Is about you enjoying the Camino with the reassurance that you have a guide who speaks Spanish, who knows the area, and can deal with any situations that may arise and smooth over any problems. And I have a Camino Facebook page called Camino Confidence. I have an email. Shall I say my email?
Yeah. Why don't you say that, because that's probably not something we'll want to put in the description. We'll put the link to your Facebook there, but you may want to just spell that out, because that's not something, the description that can be dangerous there.
It's just CaminoConfidence@gmail.com. That's it. Great. And obviously you can contact me by WhatsApp as well.
Well, I'm gonna, if I can, ask you a question as a Spanish resident Spanish expert. We are actually just a few hours away as we're filming this. By the time this comes live, it'll be a couple weeks old, probably, into a new campaign that's being done by YouTube creators across YouTube right now called Team Seas, and this is an initiative to be able to raise funds to be able to clean up oceans across the world. But I have been thinking a lot about what are some of the ways that pilgrims are adding to that pollution issue that is, it's a worldwide issue. But certainly there are ways that that pilgrims may be adding to that. You bring 300,000 people in a year to any area, and we may be part of the problem, right? So what are some ways that you think pilgrims are contributing to pollution in Spain, and what do you think are some ways that pilgrims could be better about being able to take care of the country that's hosting us?
Well, first of all, I had to look it up. This Team Seas, I did have. I will admit it. Wow, and I'm really, really impressed with this. I think it's amazing, and I would just like to say that diving communities within Spain have been doing cleanups, and also I'd like to say that the schools in Spain, the children have excursions where they go to beaches and clean up beaches. So this is something that the Spanish are very, very passionate about. Yeah. So for the
I'm not surprised. You basically, the entire country has a coastline, so
exactly.
the ocean matters to you. Yeah.
So I spoke to my friend and neighbour Rebecca Scott about this. She is very knowledgeable about this area thing. She has a Facebook page for a non-profit group called Peaceable Projects. And one of their projects is called the Ditch Pigs Cleanup. I mean, that's just got to be Rebecca that's named that, really. It was started back in 2008, where her and her husband Paddy took black bin bags to a local park in Carrion because it was so dirty, and cleaned it up. And this resulted in an annual cleanup, and they clean up along the Francaise, but also on the Portuguese and on the Madrid. Now, I'd like to read what she said. I asked her if I could quote her, and she said, absolutely, right? So she said, there are some initiatives on the Camino, most to do with recycling. Over 13 years of litter picking, we have seen pilgrims' waste evolve. It used to be plastic bottles and aluminium cans and cigarette packets. Now it's shifted to toilet paper and face masks. These are both actual biohazard material, and every pilgrim should be responsible for their own rubbish. And she came up with the following advice. 1, most importantly, well-meaning pilgrims must never touch other people's toilet paper. So, I can't imagine ever wanting to do that, but they do this. They do this, they do pick up other people's toilet paper. 2, use washable masks that are less likely to be lost or thrown away. And as an animal lover, cut the strings, please, when you throw them away. We've got a lot of wild cats, etc., that could strangle themselves. Please learn to relieve yourselves outdoors without leaving your paper. Now, I use a plastic bag, which is washable, and put it in there. It doesn't weigh anything, and then empty it and then wash it out. That's what I do. And never ever use wipes because they don't degrade. Pilgrims need to police each other. That's a difficult one because a lot of people are not happy about confronting somebody who's perhaps thrown something on the floor. But, we do need to sort of remind each other occasionally. Group leaders or guides must stress the issues to their groups, especially youth groups, who apparently are the worst offenders. I added one here. People spend a lot of money on clothes, right? Why not buy more sustainable clothes? For example, I bought some trousers and a top from Fourth Element, which is actually they actually produce diving clothes, but they are a sustainable company. So maybe something like that would be a good thing to do. And that's it. She said, and there ends the what did she call it again? I can't remember. Yes. So anyway, that's the end of that. But I thought that was really useful information.
Well, I think that is incredibly helpful. I think I did also notice this summer, and I had heard people say on some of the forums too, that the masks are a real problem now because they're just everywhere, and that's true here in our cities in America too. But I can imagine on Camino is certainly it has become a problem there as well. Interesting about the not cleaning up other people's paper, because there has been a kind of a movement among pilgrims to take care of to pick up trash as you go, and I've even on several pilgrimages I've seen people carrying a bag with them and picking up garbage on the Camino. I think that's really kind of a cool thing that people have wanted to contribute to cleaning it up that way, but not touching somebody else's toilet paper is probably good advice anyway, particularly in the middle of a pandemic. Not that waste has anything to do with the pandemic, but that's a significant lesson. But it's interesting. There's I think a part of the whole leaving waste and so on. There's all kinds of leave no trace principles with regard to hiking and camping and so on. There are ways to go to the bathroom outside so that you don't leave waste.
Yes, yeah.
But, a lot of Camino pilgrims are not hikers, right? They're not campers for the most part. These are people who are doing it for the first time. They don't even know how to go to the bathroom outside. And even some of those principles, because so much of the Camino is on private property, some of those still wouldn't be appropriate even if they leave no trace. But they would certainly be better than some of what we've seen where you see the little place where you can get off the Camino and it looks like it's become a toilet back there. Where some of those places, particularly when it's next to a road or something where, you know, it's been hard to get off for a while, and then you go and you're like, oh my gosh, there's been everybody and their brother and sister have been back here. So yeah, I appreciate that. That has become actually a pretty common conversation on our forums as well, that people need to take care of their waste better. And actually, you know, part of that leave no trace principles is that you need to be far from water sources. And I don't know how frequently that's happening too, that people are going next to rivers and things like that, you know, that really needs to not happen. So I appreciate that feedback. Well, I'm probably going to continue to talk about this Team C's initiative over the next several months, and I'm hopeful that they'll be able to reach the goal of $30 million that they want to raise between now and the end of the year. So hopefully we'll be successful in being able to do that and help clean up the oceans a bit. Carol, thank you so much for being on. Thanks for sharing some of your story, and really grateful for what you're doing to be able to empower people to be able to make the pilgrimage.
Thank you too. It's been really nice talking to you, Jeremiah.
Yeah, good talking to you too. Buen Camino, pilgrims.